The problem today with a lot of guys is all they can do is just fancy shit, but they don't have any fundamentals.
I think kayfabe died for sure.
The Undertaker just admitted kayfabe is dead. Ric Flair thinks the newbies are not up to par with what wrestling used to be. And Bret Hart, he's calling out WWE's Intercontinental Champion to his face, telling him his wrestling style is nothing but unprofessional bullshit. But that's just the beginning of what these legends really think about today's WWE. Bret the Hitman Hart. Bret the Hitman Hart, the five-time WWF champion and arguably the greatest technical wrestler in history, has become wrestling's most uncompromising critic. Inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2006 individually and 2019 with the Hart Foundation, Hart's views have only intensified with time. Hart's criticisms stem from one core belief: the best pro wrestling has to always pretend to be real. Everything he says circles back to this fundamental principle learned in the legendary dungeon under his father, Stu Hart. The phoniness of modern wrestling drives Hart crazy. When he attended WWE's Clash at the Castle in Cardiff, Wales in September 2022, he was embarrassed. The crowd mimicked wrestlers' leg slaps during matches, turning the event into what Hart called a big giant charade where everybody is in on it. He contrasted this with a simple dungeon wrestling match featuring Zoe Sager, praising her real headlock as superior to anything at the massive WWE Spectacular. Hart's criticism of leg slapping, that sound effect wrestlers make by slapping their thigh when throwing kicks or punches, represents everything he believes is wrong. In a 2023 HN Live interview, he labeled modern wrestling pathetic from top to bottom, specifically calling out both WWE and AEW. To Hart, this isn't just a minor issue. It's a symptom of wrestling becoming performance rather than immersive art. However, Hart's biggest concern is wrestlers inflicting real pain on each other without purpose, particularly through stiff chops that leave welts and bruises. This came to a head in 2025, Hart's face-to-face confrontation with WWE Intercontinental Champion Gunther. According to August 2025 reports, Hart directly told Gunther his signature chops were bullshit and lazy shit wrestling because they cause real pain without serving the story. Hart's philosophy: when you're hurting somebody for real, you're unprofessional. This represents a generational clash. Gunther's hard-hitting European style wins acclaim for intensity and realness, but to Hart, it's just two guys actually hurting each other, the opposite of the art form he mastered. Hart only allowed Ric Flair one chop per match, having no respect for those who hurt each other on purpose. The irony isn't lost that Hart, whose career ended from a concussion by Bill Goldberg in 1999, speaks loudest about unnecessary harm. Goldberg remains Hart's go-to example of dangerous wrestling. Hart also hates over-rehearsed sequences making wrestling look choreographed. On Fox Sports Australia in 2024, he criticized group belly flops and wrestlers diving onto bowling pins, groups waiting to catch someone asking, "Who wants to watch that?" These spots destroy suspension of disbelief. Modern wrestlers, according to Hart, don't know anything about telling stories or what headlocks are, reducing matches to athletic displays. In a 2023 TalkSport interview, he lamented WrestleMania's lack of drama, stating today's wrestlers don't know how to tell a story, despite incredible athleticism. Hart's sharpest criticism targets AEW. In an April 2025 Ariel Helwani show appearance, he called it full of mostly actors trying to pretend to be wrestlers, urging them to get on with the real wrestling and just quit acting so much. He misses the ruggedness of his era's characters like Kurt Hennig and Dynamite Kid. However, Hart acknowledges positives. He's praised Roman Reigns for being more realistic and credible. He's commended Rhea Ripley for making wrestling feel pretty real all the time. And he's highlighted British wrestlers like Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate as signs wrestling might return to dramatic storytelling. Hart believes wrestling is cyclical and could change again as people get tired of the phony wrestling. His hope is the industry will return to its principles: realism without real harm, psychology over spots, and storytelling that makes audiences forget they're watching predetermined entertainment. The Undertaker. When The Undertaker speaks about kayfabe's death, it carries unique weight. The dead man, inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2022, maintained one of wrestling's most protected characters for 3 decades, rarely breaking character outside the ring. Through his podcast, 6 Feet Under with Mark Calloway, launched in 2023, Undertaker's become candid about modern wrestling's shortcomings. His concerns center on over-reliance on athleticism at storytelling's expense. In October 2024, Taker described modern wrestling as two different worlds, calling athleticism a curse for overshadowing storytelling. Moonsaults, 450 splashes, and high-flying maneuvers are video game type stuff, causing wrestlers to forget wrestling's purpose. To Undertaker, wrestling isn't about wrestling moves, it's about storytelling. When you prioritize spectacular over substantive, matches pop crowds momentarily but remain forgettable. His injury warnings are prescient. He's warned wrestlers relying heavily on athleticism are going to burn out and going to get hurt. Observations proven tragically accurate with young wrestlers forced into early retirement. The human body wasn't designed for nightly 450 splashes and suicide dives through tables. But Undertaker's most passionate criticism targets how modern wrestlers handle social media and kayfabe. In November 2024, he addressed this head-on, creating a huge disconnect undermining their ring work. Even with his supernatural character, he made everything make sense. These details matter. Their absence troubles him deeply. In February 2024, Undertaker lamented the calm backstage environment, contrasting it with his era's intensity. Modern wrestlers lack pride and grit, playing video games instead of building tough personas translating to compelling television. Undertaker does offer praise. In February 2025, he praised Gunther's classic approach. He acknowledges business is great financially, but worries about today's style's long-term viability. Undertaker's concerns come from deep business love and genuine worry about its direction. He spent 30 years creating wrestling's most iconic character by respecting fundamentals, storytelling, psychology, protecting kayfabe, and making people believe. Seeing these principles abandoned troubles him, not because he's stuck in the past, but because he knows what works. Jake the Snake Roberts. Jake the Snake Roberts, the master of psychology inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2014, represents the thinking man's wrestler, someone who could make you believe he was the building's most dangerous person without throwing a single high spot. His DDT finisher innovation and intense, cerebral promos set psychological warfare standards Roberts believes modern wrestling has lost. On his podcast, The Snake Pit with Diamond Dallas Page, launched in 2022, Roberts increasingly voices frustrations about wrestling becoming physical spectacle rather than mental manipulation. His DDT's devaluation particularly frustrates Roberts. In November 2023, he addressed wrestlers using the DDT as a false finish. While appreciating it keeps his name relevant, he views it as wasting once devastating impact. The DDT in Jake's hands looked like it would kill you due to setup and psychology. Now it's another transition move barely getting reactions. In January 2023, he blasted kicking out of finishers, highlighting matches where spectacular moves can't finish, but simple roll-ups can. This inconsistency represents everything Roberts believes is wrong with modern booking. If Canadian destroyers or 630 splashes can't finish matches, why should audiences believe anything's credible? The logic's backwards. Roberts particularly hates strong style, stiff, realistic strikes popularized in Japanese wrestling. In February 2023, he questioned the entire philosophy. Fans know wrestling's scripted, so causing real harm serves no purpose except feeding wrestlers' egos. It's not tough, it's stupid. In July 2025, he called apron bumps pretty stupid, questioning their purpose and risk. His perspective comes from watching friends suffer long-term consequences of unnecessary risks taken to momentarily pop crowds. Most troubling to Roberts is kayfabe erosion. In September 2025, in viral Instagram and YouTube clips, Roberts accused modern wrestlers of no longer caring about protecting the business. They rely on bells and whistles instead of character protection, specifically targeting AEW wrestlers for lacking commitment to maintaining illusions. Roberts' psychology philosophy was expressed in a 2011 PW Insider interview, saying matches should mentally masturbate audiences through emotional connection, not just technical spots. Modern wrestlers repeat sequences without creating emotional investment. They execute moves without understanding the stories those moves should tell. In February 2023, post-wrestling, Roberts expressed frustration that younger wrestlers ignore veteran advice, predicting in 10 years, nobody will remember them because they didn't do anything different. This lack of originality and willingness to learn represents a fundamental problem, breaking the generational knowledge transfer sustaining the industry for over a century. Roberts isn't entirely negative. He's praised psychology-focused wrestlers like Mick Foley. In March 2025, he praised John Cena's longevity, and in February 2025, he advocated for high wrestler pay. Roberts Robert's influence on wrestling psychology remains undeniable. He taught The Undertaker many psychological principles, making the dead man effective. His criticism stems from deep understanding of what makes wrestling work: emotion manipulation, suspense building, and creating lasting moments. These skills are being lost. Kevin Nash, the WWE Hall of Famer inducted in 2015 individually and 2020 with the NWO, has become one of modern wrestling's most vocal critics through his Click This podcast launched in 2022. Standing 6'10", Nash represented an era where size, charisma, and deliberate pacing took precedence over non-stop action. Nash's fundamental criticism is modern wrestling moves too fast. In December 2023, he labeled modern wrestling too fake, arguing wrestlers go too fast and don't know how to sell moves impact. This rapid pace prevents fan investment. No time to process one move before the next happens. Selling particularly frustrates Nash. In May 2025, he observed nobody sells anymore. Everybody just registers what's happening, then it's a turnaround. He defines registering as merely acknowledging moves for the next spot without conveying pain or advancing story. It's the difference between reacting to moves and selling impact, a subtle but crucial distinction separating good from great wrestling. Nash particularly criticizes multi-man matches, calling them such a formula. In June 2025, he described predictable patterns where two people go for 2 minutes with high spots, someone makes a save and oversells, then the other two go into their menagerie of high spots. He criticized WWE's production for focusing solely on ring action while ignoring potentially interesting floor action. In July 2025, Nash targeted Raquel Rodriguez for working small despite her size, expressing frustration she makes herself small when selling, instead of staying up and selling big. For Nash, who understood using his imposing frame to his advantage, watching someone with physical advantages fail utilizing them is particularly frustrating. But Nash's most pointed criticism concerns the modern grind, or lack thereof. Nash argues this lack of grinding hurts modern wrestlers multiple ways. They don't develop the same crowd connection from working hundreds of yearly matches in different towns. They don't learn working injured or sick because the show must go on. They don't develop toughness, physical and mental, defining previous generations. The modern style, Nash warns, won't allow these guys to last 30 years because bodies break down from high-impact work combined with never learning pacing. However, Nash acknowledges positives. He praises Seth Rollins as a great worker, despite injury concerns. He appreciates WWE's concussion protocols, even seeing them as evidence of style dangers. Nash's criticisms portray modern wrestling as too fast, too formulaic, and physically unsustainable. His perspective comes from someone who worked a deliberate psychological style, allowing a long, relatively healthy career. Watching young wrestlers destroy bodies for diminishing returns while lacking fundamental skills frustrates him because he knows there's a better way. He lived it. Ric Flair, Rick Nature Boy Flair, the 16-time world champion and 2-time WWE Hall of Famer, 2008 individually, 2012 with the Four Horsemen, has been increasingly candid about modern wrestling frustrations through his podcast, To Be the Man, with Conrad Thompson since 2021. Flair's wrestling philosophy was built on territorial-era fundamentals: 60-minute Broadway matches, unscripted promos, and understanding every ring movement should have purpose and psychology. His criticism stems from seeing these fundamentals discarded for flash without substance. Social media is Flair's public enemy number one. In October 2023, Flair blamed social media for wrestlers prioritizing fan opinions over veteran advice, arguing it creates entitlement and dilutes craft as performers become more Twitter-concerned than actually improving in-ring work. Flair's frustration with giving advice reached breaking points in January 2023-2024 when he explained on To Be the Man that younger talent takes his opinion, then checks what fans say, so he doesn't give advice anymore. Imagine being a 16-time world champion offering decades of experience advice, having it ignored for random internet people who never worked matches. That's Flair's reality, explaining why he's largely given up helping younger talent. Rehearsed matches particularly gall Flair. In January 2025, he slammed the practice, saying he never practiced, and that's the only thing in business he can't stand. You can never guarantee crowd reactions. Flair's philosophy was built on spontaneity, reacting to crowds, calling matches on the fly, adjusting based on what worked. For someone who built his legend on unscripted 20-minute promos pouring his soul to cameras, watching wrestlers read scripted lines feels like betraying what made wrestling special. This represents complete wrestling basics breakdown. These aren't advanced techniques. They're fundamentals that should be mastered before television appearances. Post-Vince WWE's political nature troubles Flair. By January 2024, he criticized WWE's internal dynamics, saying WWE is very political and everybody wants to run it, adding he liked how Vince ran it because everybody knew where they stood. While Vince's leadership had critics, Flair provided clarity. Now too many cooks are in the kitchen and the product suffers from lacking unified vision. However, Flair balances criticism with praise. He celebrates WWE's current success, saying everything's clicking on such positive notes that it's insanity. He praises his daughter Charlotte and IYO Sky. He appreciates Logan and Jake Paul, calling them better than some full-time wrestlers because they draw money. Flair's criticisms portray modern wrestling as overly corporate, scripted, and influenced by external noise rather than raw instinct and veteran respect defining his career. Whether discussing practicing matches, union needs, or lost fundamentals, Flair remains one of wrestling's most unfiltered voices. Bill Goldberg. Bill Goldberg, the WWE Hall of Famer inducted in 2018, whose undefeated streak of 173 wins in WCW became legendary, has been vocal about modern wrestling losing Attitude-Era edge and intensity. Goldberg's criticism centers on repeatedly calling the modern product soft. In January 2021, on WWE's After the Bell podcast, he echoed The Undertaker's comments, agreeing WWE is kinda soft. This isn't just about physical toughness, it's about mental resilience and handling criticism without becoming defensive or emotional. Modern wrestling's lack of simplicity troubles Goldberg. In October 2023, speaking with Essentially Sports, he critiqued the current product's complexity, saying internal storylines aren't better, and characters surely aren't better. He contrasted this with his era, noting he remembers when good versus evil was all that was needed. His character's simplicity, an unstoppable force destroying everyone, resonated because it didn't require complex backstories or convoluted motivations. In October 2023, Goldberg said modern wrestling has lost its way and become too scripted and predictable, lacking intensity and authenticity, criticizing it's all about spots now, not story. This represents fundamental philosophy shifts, from story-driven programming where matches serve narratives to spot-driven programming where narratives exist to set up cool moves. Social media and celebrity involvement focus particularly frustrates Goldberg. He stated wrestling used to be about the ring, not likes and followers. For someone whose entire character was built on in-ring dominance, rarely cutting lengthy promos, matches often under 5 minutes, watching wrestling become as much about Twitter engagement as actual performance represents everything he believes is wrong with the industry's direction. He was referring to the spear. Goldberg criticizing dangerous wrestling's irony isn't lost on fans, particularly given his Bret Hart history. The concussion Goldberg gave Hart in 1999 ended Hart's career and permanently affected his quality of life. Yet Goldberg's strong style and unnecessary violence criticism suggests he's learned from mistakes and doesn't want others repeating them. Goldberg does offer praise where felt due. He called Drew McIntyre a locker room leader who forced his way up and earned his stock. He defends his spear innovation, now the most replicated finishing move. Goldberg's criticisms of modern wrestling's softness, overcomplication, and lack of simple, intense storytelling represent perspectives from someone who lived mainstream American wrestling's last truly dangerous era. Stone Cold Steve Austin. Stone Cold Steve Austin, the 6-time WWF champion and WWE Hall of Famer inducted in 2009, has a specific bone to pick with modern WWE. They're revealing too much behind-the-scenes content and destroying kayfabe. Austin's criticism is narrowly focused, but deeply felt. On April 30th, 2025, on The Ariel Helwani Show, he explicitly criticized WWE's increasing transparency, expressing concerns about peeling back curtains and harming immersion, rooted in a career built on maintaining kayfabe even when everyone knew wrestling was predetermined. WWE's docuseries Unreal announcement, showing writers' rooms and creative processes, particularly troubled Austin. In May 5-9, 2025 follow-up coverage, he expressed disinterest, saying he's not interested in seeing writers' rooms and you gotta keep some mystique. His pushback against transparency upticks comes from concern it could alienate fans by making wrestling feel less real. Austin's era was defined by strict kayfabe adherence. In December 2024, he recounted a 1990s incident where he fined a wrestler $15,000 for breaking kayfabe backstage, emphasizing they protected the business. This wasn't about being old-fashioned. It was about understanding wrestling's magic depends on maintaining certain illusions, and once shattered, they can never be fully restored. In May 2023, Austin touched on WWE's shift toward openness, noting it risks spoiling magic by revealing too much. He referenced the Attitude Era's guarded backstage environment, saying you don't want to give away all secrets. But Austin isn't entirely negative about modern WWE. He praises the product as being on a roll from success standpoints. He commends talents like CM Punk for adapting. He acknowledges wrestling must change but warns against over-transparency. Austin admits his own era's flaws, noting injuries forced his brawling style, showing self-awareness. His perspective isn't about claiming everything was perfect in the Attitude Era. His transparency criticism isn't about wanting wrestling exactly like 1998. It's about preserving fundamental elements making professional wrestling work, willing suspension of disbelief. Austin's concerns about WWE's unreal and general transparency trends represent valid questions. How much can wrestling reveal about inner workings before fundamentally changing product-audience relationships? As one of wrestling history's biggest stars, he understands what made his era work, and he's concerned losing mystique for transparency might trade short-term engagement for long-term damage to wrestling's unique entertainment position. Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan, the six-time WWF champion inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2005, individually and 2020 with the NWO, has one specific criticism standing out above all others. Modern wrestlers don't look like wrestlers. In June 2023, on the Full Send podcast, Hogan delivered his most direct criticism, describing modern wrestlers as often looking like they should be bagging my groceries, contrasting them with his era's monster-sized men who were intimidating and fought for real stakes. This comment went viral and sparked intense debate about wrestling body types, with many accusing Hogan of being out of touch or body shaming. But Hogan's criticism isn't just about size, it's about believability and presence. He argues wrestlers should look special, different from regular people. During the Hulkamania era, wrestlers were larger-than-life figures you couldn't imagine encountering at grocery stores. Andre the Giant, Ultimate Warrior, even Hogan himself, these were physical specimens looking like they belonged in different humanity categories. That visual impact was part of wrestling's appeal. Hogan acknowledges smaller wrestlers' impressive athleticism, but questions its purpose, saying they do so much impressive stuff in one match that he wouldn't do in a year, asking, what does it mean? This implies high spots lack storytelling or impact when they become routine. If every match features 15 near falls and 20 high spots, nothing feels special anymore. There's obvious counterpoint to Hogan's physique criticism. Many of his era's monster-sized men achieved size through steroid use, and many died young as a result. Reddit discussions about Hogan's comments frequently note his generation suffered from drugs, alcohol, and suicide, making his criticism of today's smaller but healthier wrestlers ring hollow. Hogan does offer positives about modern landscapes. In May 2025, he praised AEW's women's division, particularly Toni Storm and Mariah May's match. He appreciates more wrestlers getting paid and increased opportunities. By 2025, Hogan's comments have softened somewhat, possibly due to reported health challenges, over 25 surgeries in the last decade, and reduced public appearances. But his fundamental criticism remains. Wrestling has lost something when performers don't look distinctly different from audiences watching them. The body size debate Hogan reignited is complicated. Today's wrestlers are arguably better pure athletes than any previous generation, but they don't have the same visual impact as 80s and 90s giants. Whether that matters depends on what you believe wrestling should be: legitimate athletic exhibition or larger-than-life spectacle where performers look like superheroes come to life. Jim Ross. Jim Ross, the WWE Hall of Famer inducted in 2007 and widely regarded as the greatest wrestling commentator of all time, has turned his legendary voice toward modern wrestling criticism through his Grillin' JR podcast with Conrad Thompson since 2019. Ross's criticism often focuses on his own field, commentary. In July 2025, he blasted modern broadcast teams for overshadowing matches, saying too many try stealing spotlights instead of letting ring action do the talking. He urged more laying out, silence, to let visuals breathe. This philosophy defined Ross's legendary career. He understood sometimes the most powerful thing announcers can do is shut up and let moments speak for themselves. In July 2023, Ross criticized announcers for lazy pronoun use, e.g., he instead of names, calling it bad broadcasting. He recalled Vince McMahon drilling him, asking who's he, who's she, who's they, who's them. Clear communication matters in wrestling commentary because viewers need to follow action without confusion. But Ross's criticisms extend beyond announcing. In November 2024, he slammed modern wrestlers for poor selling, saying they register what's happening, then it's a turnaround, and nobody sells. He called it a fail and tied it to bad habits. These details matter because they separate good from great wrestling, little things adding up to create believability. In August 2025, agreeing with Bret Hart, Ross called chops overused and baloney, arguing they cause real harm without advancing stories, noting nobody ever won matches with chops. This represents broader concerns about moves being used for visual or auditory impact rather than their logical storytelling place. Ross also criticized event structure. In September 2023, he advocated for fewer quarterly pay-per-views to build hype, arguing monthly events dilute storytelling. In July 2025, he reiterated preferring 3-hour PPVs, calling longer shows gambles with fans' attention. Ross does offer praise. He defended AEW's Death Riders faction in 2025, praising Jon Moxley's group as a good gimmick. He admires work rate in violent matches, even if not his style. Ross's criticisms stem from passion for wrestling as art form. His concerns about commentary excess, poor selling, and derivative storytelling come from someone who spent decades learning to enhance matches without overwhelming them. When the voice that called Austin 316, Mankind's Hell in a Cell fall, and countless legendary moments speaks about what's wrong with wrestling, it's worth listening. Eric Bischoff. Eric Bischoff, the WWE Hall of Famer inducted in 2021 and former WCW president, has become modern wrestling's harshest critic, particularly toward AEW. Through podcasts 83 Weeks since 2018 and Strictly Business, launched 2023, Bischoff hasn't just criticized, he's declared AEW dead on arrival. In December 2024 on The Ariel Helwani Show, he delivered his most damning assessment, labeling it a disappointment and embarrassment, responding on X that it's gone from being an exciting new opportunity to an embarrassment to the genre. The criticism is comprehensive. Bischoff argues AEW has no idea what they're doing, and they're too stubborn to learn. Using simple analogy, he explains, Bischoff specifically targets Tony Khan, calling him clueless. His assessment is that as long as Tony Khan's in charge, it will never change because Khan wants validation as a booker rather than being smart enough to hire one. Dave Meltzer receives frequent attacks from Bischoff, who accuses him of being delusional and propping up AEW. In September 2025, Bischoff said Dave is emotionally invested and his dirt sheet wet dream is circling the toilet bowl. Bischoff's criticism of modern factions is particularly pointed. He argues groups like AEW's Blackpool Combat Club and even WWE's Bloodline are pale imitations of the NWO without originality. He stated they're trying to recreate NWO magic, but without edge. His argument is NWO succeeded due to genuine WCW-WWF competition, not scripting. It felt real because company wars were real. But Bischoff doesn't limit criticism to AEW. In March 2025, he critiqued WWE's scripted corporate feel, saying it stifles creativity compared to WCW's competitive chaos. He argued WWE is too sanitized and doesn't even feel live anymore. Bischoff does offer some WWE praise. He credits WWE for elevating wrestling, saying WWE has undeniably taken sports entertainment to levels even he couldn't have imagined. He praised NXT's ratings wins and the Bloodline's execution, despite NWO comparisons. Bischoff's criticisms carry weight because he actually succeeded in challenging WWE during the Monday Night Wars. His WCW defeated WWF in ratings for 83 consecutive weeks, hence his podcast's name. When someone with that track record says a company has no hope, it's worth considering, even if his delivery is often harsh and personal. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.